The sounds of animals being led to slaughter blended with the words of ritual. Fat, feathers, and animal hide mixed with the smell of slaughtered animals, the smell of burning flour, and the fragrance of incense. It doesn't get any better the more of the book of Leviticus that we read. Further on, there are graphic descriptions of skin diseases, mold and mildew in houses, and lots of lists. Lists of what to eat and what not to eat, what to sacrifice and when, prohibited sexual relations, and more lists. There's very little narrative in the book of Leviticus, and with the exception of the consecration of the wilderness tabernacle, almost all the narrative is hard-going because it recounts the deaths of those who violate the rules. Yet this book is seen as central in Judaism. It is literally central in the Torah scroll, with 2 books before it and 2 books after it. In traditional Judaism, when children start to study, they don't start with the stories of Genesis or the stories of Exodus. They start with the sacrifices in Leviticus. In the prayer book, there are readings about the sacrifices and prayers about the rebuilding of the temple in Jerusalem so that we may reinstitute the sacrificial cult. We as Reformed Jews aren't interested in a biblical approach to sacrifices and skin diseases, so why bother? Can't we just skip right over this and get right to the book of Numbers? Is there anything we can learn from these seemingly alien rituals? For our ancestors, there was a purpose for these rituals and their sacrifices. Their preoccupation with skin diseases, impurity, and pollution was simple. Like all people, they were hoping to create order out of chaos. They were trying to understand their world. At times, things seem out of control. By setting up this system, they created order. There were things that are holy and things that are not. Among the things that are holy were things that have a sense of purity to them. These were tahor, ritually pure. There were also things that were tameh, ritually impure. This idea of ritual purity has nothing to do with cleanliness or hygiene. It has to do with the degree of possible closeness to God. It is not that any of us is ever far from God, but for the Israelites, only things and people who were ritually pure could be brought to the sacred areas that were thought to be closest to God. Mary Douglas suggests that the best way to think of ritual purity and impurity is as a series of circles within circles, similar to the planets circling the sun. It is possible for people or things to move further and further into the centermost circle, and depending on circumstances, it is possible to move to the outermost circle. Besides the solar system, the system of circles was echoed in the setup of the Israelites' camp in the wilderness. At the very center of the camp was the Holy of Holies, the place where the Ark of the Covenant was kept, where God spoke to Moses. Around that was an area where only the priests were allowed. Moving farther outward was the area where sacrifices were offered and Israelites could come. The tribes were camped in a square around the wilderness tabernacle with 3 tribes on each side. Outside of the camp was considered ritually impure. What the book of Leviticus does is set up the boundaries of the system and then explains how one can move within the system. The thing to remember is that the goal of all of this was to draw near to God. There were things that could move a person farther away from the center, such as violating a commandment. There were also ways to move closer to the center, such as being born a priest or bringing sacrifices. This desire to draw closer to God can be seen in the Hebrew word for sacrificial offering, korban. The root of this word is kuf resh bet, karav, to draw near, to approach. The same root is used in the Hebrew words bekerev, among, or krovim, relatives, those who are close to you, or bekarov, soon. Still, where does that leave us? Am I suggesting a radical rearrangement of the bima to include an altar for the sacrifice of animals so that we can restore that old-time religion and become ritually pure? Do we want our homes checked for the presence of mold because we are fearful of ritual impurity? No. The system of the sacrificial cult might not work for us moderns, but the goal of the system does. The Israelites drew near to God through sacrifice and by following the guidelines in the book of Leviticus. Even though we no longer offer sacrifices, we too would like to draw near to God. It's why I offer people, when I lead services on a Saturday morning, the opportunity to come up and become closer with the Torah. And as you can see, for some people it is incredibly meaningful. The ways that we draw near to God may no longer be as tangible as the sounds, sights, and smells of bringing a sheep to be sacrificed. But our prayers and our actions contain the possibility of helping us move closer to God.